I am officially declaring a national emergency. Two very big words. The action I am taking will open up access to up to $50 billion of very important and a large amount of money for states and territories and localities. In furtherance of the order, I'm urging every state to set up emergency operation centers effective immediately. We've been working very hard on this. We've made tremendous progress.
The number of coronavirus cases in the United States is now more than 2,000, with 50 deaths. The White House has been taking continued fire over the nation's slow rate of coronavirus testing. This morning, New York's first coronavirus drive-through testing center opened in New Rochelle, the Westchester County town with the nation's largest cluster of COVID-19 cases. At the White House, Trump touted efforts to expand such tests while also fielding questions about his role in the initial response to the outbreak.
We've been in discussions with pharmacies and retailers to make drive-through tests available. The goal is for individuals to be able to drive up and be swabbed without having to leave your car.
Dr. Fauci said earlier this week that the lag in testing was, in fact, a failing. Do you take responsibility for that?
Yeah, no, I don't take responsibility at all.
Overnight, the United States officially closing its borders to foreign nationals traveling from 26 nations in Europe for the next 30 days. Americans flying home will be routed to one of 13 U.S. airports for screening.
Americans that were returning will be screened and asked to voluntarily participate in a 14-day quarantine.
The restriction taking effect just hours after Europe was declared the epicenter of the pandemic by the World Health Organization.
More reported cases and deaths than the rest of the world combined, apart from China.
On Thursday, thousands of U.S. travelers rushing to European airports following the president's Oval Office address.
We will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days.
But the White House later clarifying this was for foreign nationals, not American citizens and residents. 17-year-old student Ella Isgar has been studying abroad in France for 6 months, but had to scramble for a flight home to New York.
I understand the fear. The part that got frustrating was how nonchalant it felt until 6 a.m. in the morning. We're getting 1,000 emails saying, Trump's made this announcement. You got to get home as fast as possible.
The Conover family was visiting their daughter in Oxford, but decided to stay in London because flights were just too expensive.
We're going to stay on stay here in London a couple more days, let stuff settle a little bit.
Meanwhile, Friday afternoon, President Trump saying the administration is weighing whether to also restrict travel from the UK.
The numbers have gone up fairly precipitously over the last 24 hours, so we may be adding that. And we may be adding a couple of others.
You said that you don't take responsibility, but you did disband the White House Pandemic Office, and the officials that were working in that office left this administration abruptly. So what responsibility do you take to that? And the officials that worked in that office said that the White House lost valuable time because that office wasn't disbanded. What do you make of that?
Well, I just think it's a nasty question. When you say me, I didn't do it. We have a group of people. I could ask perhaps my administration, but I could perhaps ask Tony about that because I don't know anything about it. I mean, you say we did that. I don't know anything about it.
Now, that would seem to contradict what Trump said nearly a month ago when he was asked about cuts to federal agencies that were tasked with responding to public health crises.
Some of the people we cut, they haven't been used for many, many years. And if we ever need them, we can get them very quickly. And rather than spending the money, and I'm a business person, I don't like having thousands of people around when you don't need them. When we need them, we can get them back very quickly.
Hopefully. Meanwhile, the Washington Post reports a second person who visited President Trump's private Mar-a-Lago estate last weekend has tested positive for coronavirus. The first to test positive was the press secretary to the Brazilian president, who was focused with Trump at Mar-a-Lago on Saturday. Today, Trump was asked about that interaction.
The person you were standing next to, whether you know who he is or not, tested positive for coronavirus. Dr. Fauci said this morning, if you stand next to somebody who tested positive, you should self-isolate and get a test. You say your White House doctor is telling you something different. Who should Americans listen to? And my second question is...
I think they have to listen to their doctors. And I think they shouldn't be jumping to get the test unless it's necessary. Somebody said there's a picture with somebody taking a picture with me, but I haven't seen it.
Well, doctors have
but
said
I
you
can
might
tell
have it even if you don't have symptoms. Are you being selfish by not getting tested and potentially
Well, I didn't say I
exposing-
wasn't going to be tested.
Are you going to be?
Most likely, yeah. Most
When do
likely.
you think
Not for
that'll
that
happen?
reason, but because I think I will do it anyway.
Will you let us
fairly
know the
soon.
results?
We're working on that. We're working out a schedule.
All right, today, Miami Mayor Francis Suarez announced that he, too, has tested positive for COVID-19 after meeting with that same Brazilian delegation at Mar-a-Lago this weekend. Suarez is now currently quarantined at home. The coronavirus is affecting the political life of the nation in other ways as well. Louisiana is the first state to postpone its presidential primaries because of the coronavirus outbreak. It'll push back its presidential nominating contests to June 20th from the original date of April 4th. Election officials in Arizona, Illinois, and Ohio, all of which hold primaries this Tuesday, issued a statement today saying the polls will be open and they are taking precautions to protect voters. And in Wyoming, its Democratic Party canceled the in-person portion of its upcoming caucus. One universal sign that the virus has upended the daily life of the nation, the millions of kids who will be out of school as the week begins on Monday.
The federal government is taking new steps forward to fight the pandemic. The president today declaring a state of emergency, freeing billions of dollars for the effort and announcing a plan to accelerate testing. But worry and uncertainty are driving an unprecedented drawdown of life as we knew it only a few weeks ago.
Appreciate everybody being here.
The president's declaration of a national emergency comes as the coronavirus crisis deepens across the country amid a new warning it could last 2 months. With additional governors banning large groups from congregating today, the National Guard is now active in a growing number of states. Today, scenes like this are playing out in so-called hot zones, where the coronavirus has taken a foothold in local communities. New York State now has more than 400 confirmed cases. In New Rochelle, a 1-mile containment zone is leaving many on edge.
Nervous, scared, confused, not really sure what's going on.
With one Chicago hospital turning its garage into a makeshift triage center, more pop-up clinics and drive-through testing labs are becoming inundated. In Colorado, this one can only stay open for a few hours.
There are likely thousands of cases in Colorado that have not yet been tested or whose tests are pending.
As the government urges caution, there is concern fear will turn to panic. The run on supplies and the wait to get into grocery stores, a stark contrast to normally bustling city centers and subway stations now eerily empty. In several states, every school has shuttered to slow the spread of the virus. In Los Angeles, the nation's second largest school district, with over 500,000 children, classes are canceled for at least 2 weeks.
You know, it's hard on parents because now we have to figure out, who's going to watch our kids.
With Louisiana becoming the first state to postpone an election because of the coronavirus, some of the nation's most iconic venues are shut down. The Smithsonian Museums, the National Zoo, the Space Needle, and Disney World will close. Kerry Sanders is there.
Disney World is the largest single location employer in the nation, with close to 70,000 employees, all who have been told they will still get paid while the park is closed.
Today, more high-profile cases confirmed. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's wife has the virus, along with Miami's mayor. But as the number of cases rises, so do the number of recoveries. Clyde and Renee Smith are now cleared from quarantine.
Be careful, but don't be afraid. It's not something that's going to jump out and grab you.
Tonight, amid a growing scare, a voice of reason, hoping to offer a sense of calm during a crisis.
Tonight, a show of force from the Rose Garden as President Trump, flanked by major CEOs and his task force, announced a national emergency.
I am officially declaring a national emergency. 2 very big words. The action I am taking will open up access to up to $50 billion.
The president saying he will also urge states to set up emergency operation centers, call on hospitals to enact emergency preparedness plans, partner with private companies to increase testing abilities, and set up drive-through test sites.
The goal is for individuals to be able to drive up and be swabbed without having to leave your car.
The markets rebounded after suffering their worst day Thursday since 1987. But the president has come under harsh criticism for failing to act quickly enough, with reports of test kit shortages all across the country, something his own top doctor, Anthony Fauci, said was a failing this week.
It is a failing. I mean, let's admit it.
President Trump responding when pressed by NBC News.
You take responsibility for that, and when can you guarantee that every single American who needs a test will be able to have a test?
No, I don't take responsibility at all, because we were given a set of circumstances, and we were given rules, regulations, and specifications from a different time. Wasn't meant for this kind of an event with the kind of numbers that we're talking about. This will start very quickly, and we'll have the ability to do in the millions over a very, very quick period of time.
The event was not without mixed messaging. The president shook hands with a few of the business leaders, despite CDC guidance to avoid that. And at times, he seemed to downplay the urgency.
5 million within a month, I doubt we'll need anywhere near that.
And just last week, Mr. Trump was pictured standing next to a Brazilian official who was visiting Mar-a-Lago, who later tested positive for coronavirus.
Are you being selfish by not getting tested?
Well, I didn't say I wasn't going to be tested.
Are you going to be?
Most likely, yeah. Most
When do
likely.
you think
Not for
that'll
that
happen?
reason, but because I think I will do it anyway.
Will you let us know
fairly
the
soon?
results?
We're working on that. We're working out a schedule.
On the front lines of a pandemic that promises to only get worse, America's hospitals are already straining. In hard-hit Washington state, Providence Regional Medical Center Everett has seen double-digit cases of coronavirus. The medical director worries about what's coming.
What do we do if we have a limited number of ventilators and more patients than ventilators available? What do we do if we have more patients than beds available?
Nationwide, the U.S. has just 46,000 ICU beds, but a report suggests at least 200,000 people could need ICU care, perhaps many more. Hospitals have 160,000 respirators on hand, but a pandemic like 1918 could require more than 742,000. Already, hospitals are reporting shortages of masks and protective clothing. The country's EMS system is also bracing for a surge in coronavirus calls. There are 21,000 EMS systems in the country. 60% of their calls are basic first aid. But when a patient is struggling to breathe, it becomes a priority.
The dispatcher is telling us that this patient does have a cough and does have a fever.
Every Montgomery County, Maryland fire unit now carries an infectious disease bag with masks and face shields. The department is still waiting on 5,000 professional N95 masks it ordered in January. To conserve, firefighters were today told they should use the same mask all shift.
Take them off, place them in a paper bag, reuse them for the next person during their shift.
In Korea and Italy, the military has been called in to disinfect homes and check cars. An emergency move with a global healthcare system under stress. Tom Costello, NBC News, Rockville, Maryland.
Tonight, we're just hours away from President Trump's Europe travel ban kicking in. Citizens from 26 European countries barred from entering the U.S. Americans are not impacted by the ban, but will face voluntary quarantine, the president said tonight.
Any of the families returning from Europe will be subject to extra screening as well as self-isolation for a period of 14 days.
Many Americans are trying to get out, with airlines like Delta and United announcing they will start to reduce flights from Europe.
Yeah, we got scared.
The travel ban comes with Europe now the epicenter of the pandemic. 70% of new coronavirus cases originate here. But many Americans say there were mixed messages when the ban was first announced. China Barrett and Ethan Smith fled Portugal after President Trump announced the travel ban. Today, holed up in a London hotel room, on hold with their airline.
And we were hoping that, the government would take more concern about this, that airlines would make more of an effort.
And tonight, the president says the UK may be added to the flight ban list as infections here rise.